So if you follow us on social media at all, especially Facebook or Twitter, you know that I'm a really big fan of Gottman. I first learned about Doctors John and Julie Gottman back in college and had read some of their articles. And one of the first ones that I read was what they call the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. So just for a little background information, the Gottmans have been doing research on couples for decades, and they do this really cool, like very scientific research, particularly in Seattle. This was, I want to say they got started in the 70s or 80s, like maybe late 70s or early 80s, something like that. And they began researching couples through what they called their love lab. And basically couples would come and stay in one of their apartments for the weekend, and they'd be hooked up to different monitors, like that measured heart rate and I think temperature and that kind of thing. And they would just be observed through video for the entire weekend. And I do believe they were prompted to talk about some things that were kind of ongoing arguments. And so the Gottmans did all this research for decades, and they have so much good information on really and truly what makes a healthy and happy couple and a long-lasting relationship. And so they came up with these 4 styles of communication that are particularly damaging to relationships, and they dubbed them the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. So I wanted to share those with you guys today. Now, one thing I will say, none of us are perfect. Imagine that, in how we communicate. And so as I talk about some of these, you may go, oh gosh, I totally do that. Okay, all right, it's okay. Oh, none of us are perfect, right? And so you'll just want to look at this in the context of yourself. That's always my encouragement whenever you're learning about yourself, is that you're not hearing these things in the sense of like, oh yeah, my husband totally does that. Oh my gosh, he needs to watch this video. Well, you're welcome to share the video. My encouragement would be that you listen to these things for yourself and just kind of looking at your own styles of communication, okay? These are more so problematic when they're patterns, okay? So again, we all have our moments, but so the 4 horsemen, first one is defensiveness. And so this might be, you know, someone who comes across and maybe crosses their arms and says, oh yeah, well you do blah, 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 you know, something like that. Maybe you've asked them to take out the trash and you've kind of said, gosh, I asked you this yesterday. You know, do you mind taking it out today? And maybe they just kind of blow up and say, oh my gosh, like you never do this, you know, something like that. And so they're kind of defensive back about something. Now, a lot of times defensiveness is sparked by another 4 horsemen called criticism. And criticism and a complaint are different, because of course we need space in our relationships to make a complaint. A complaint is something that's factual. It's something that, you know, is more like neutral. There's not a lot of heat behind it. Whereas criticism, we tend to use words like you always and you never, and we kind of make it like this overgeneralization of someone or something that they're doing or not doing. So defensiveness is I would say a lot of times sparked by criticism. And so sometimes you might have one partner who's kind of perceived as highly critical, and maybe the other partner is perceived as highly defensive. So sometimes I notice in my sessions with clients that those things seem to go hand in hand, but they don't necessarily have to. The third of the 4 horsemen is called contempt. And actually, as Gottman has done more and more of the research, what they've noticed is that contempt is probably the most damaging of the 4 horsemen. And so contempt comes in different ways. This might be name calling. This might be rolling your eyes like, oh, kidding me? That's a very contemptuous kind of gesture, okay? So contempt might be something in your relationship that is problematic and not helpful toward getting to where you want to be with communicating. And then the last of the 4 horsemen is called stonewalling. And you've probably heard of silent treatment. And so silent treatment would be kind of like a classic stonewall kind of gesture. It could just be like numbing out, spacing out, just kind of giving up, like just whatever, you know. All of those things are kind of forms of stonewalling, where essentially you just kind of shut down a little bit or a lot. So those are the four horsemen. So I just give you some encouragement to do your own work and kind of owning maybe where some of those are popping up in your own life and different relationships. And for now, just a commitment to reducing and hopefully eliminating those ways of communicating. And of course, we can always address that in individual therapy because there's a lot of emotions and a lot of triggers to why we communicate in those ways. And so coming in and doing your own personal work can be really helpful.